You're a busy professional. You don't have time for fluff. You need strategies that work, and you need them fast. Welcome to Busy Pro Fast Wellness with me, your host, Alan Welsh. We're here to give you science-backed hacks and actionable tips to boost your focus, minimize friction, and maximize your results. Less time, more impact. It's time to get well, stay strong, and thrive. Let's get to it. Hello there. If you're listening to the audio version or watching on YouTube, the interview will begin in just a moment. But before we do, I'd like to share one quick reflection. What struck me most about Benjamin, my guest today, wasn't simply his knowledge of performance psychology. It was the depth of thought behind everything he said. So he was drawing on philosophy, theology, and performance science, and he doesn't offer quick fixes. Instead, what he does is he helps people understand themselves more deeply, recognizing that lasting performance begins with self-awareness. And as you'll hear, our conversation goes well beyond productivity and mental toughness. We explore purpose, uncertainty, and what it really means to perform at your best without losing yourself in the process. And there was even one point where I found myself talking about a seemingly trivial situation that had been causing me unnecessary anxiety, and Benjamin's perspective completely changed the way that I looked at it. And I think that in itself perfectly captures the value he brings. I hope that you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Let's get into it, and I will see you on the other side. Hello and welcome back to Busy Pro Fast Wellness. Today's guest challenges one of the biggest myths in high performance, that success comes simply from working harder. Benjamin Smith helps executives, founders, athletes, and elite coaches perform at their best by developing the following: calm, clarity, and confidence under pressure. His work focuses on the inner mental game and so often determines our outer performance as a result. Benjamin, a warm welcome to the podcast. I trust that you are doing well today.
Thanks, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here and have this time with you.
Great. I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we actually jump into any potential science, I want you to imagine the following scenario. Someone who seems incredibly successful walks into your office and quietly says, "You know what, Benjamin? I'm absolutely exhausted and I just don't know why." So what do you often discover is really going on in this type of situation?
It's a great question and one I see quite a bit.
Okay.
I think a lot of high-performing folks in various fields feel that sense of exhaustion. For some, it's a simple matter of finding better rest and recovery protocols, but for many, it's really tied to their sense of meaning and purpose. And there's some alignment or misalignment in their values and what they're doing. And they may be able to name that consciously, but it might also be unconscious. They just feel like something's off. Sometimes I've heard it described as a sense of spiritual misalignment, of spiritual numbness, of burnout, of exhaustion, of uncertainty. All of those words can be some of the ways that they describe it. But often it's a deeper alignment issue of who they are and what they're doing, and those things not quite being matched up.
Yeah, I get that. I've heard that kind of scenario a few times, and it sometimes boils down to, as you alluded to earlier on, about this sort of being conscious of it, having that self-awareness to realize that you're in that situation. There is that misalignment happening. For me, it's like, it's really interesting as somebody who's gone through the process myself as to why do some successful people still feel like they're constantly failing even though they are successful. Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I think some of this goes back to the that unconscious being made conscious, right? I think what I found with a lot of high performers across fields is that they get into it because of some earlier experience in their life where they
Mm.
realize that I need to be someone who's accomplished and can achieve. And that can be as a child at home, that can be early in the playground at school. It can be in an early sports experience, so many different contexts. But at some point, we learn, oh, to belong, to fit in, to be a part of this community, I need to be able to produce. And then that can be a great catalyst for growth and for working hard at a young age and developing skills. But it's hard to turn off as an adult once we reach the quote unquote pinnacle because we always think, oh, to fit in, to belong, I have to keep achieving more. I have to keep climbing the mountain.
Yeah.
And I have to keep looking for the next goal to chase. And so the work is really to start to understand that pattern and
Yeah.
recognize, hey, maybe I don't have to continually achieve to feel good about myself, to feel a sense of self-worth, to feel like I belong and I fit in and people will like and love me if I'm not producing. And that's
Yeah.
some deep inner work and healing work that has to happen. And I think it's really beautiful on the other end of what kind of forms of high performance emerge that are more form of self-expression rather than a quest for our self-worth. And
Yeah.
so that starts to I can see it in the bodies of the people I work with just beginning to sigh and relax and go, oh, okay, I'm safe.
Yeah.
It's okay. I know who I am. And now when I turn back to my work or to my craft, I get to just be me and
Yeah.
show for the world who I am through my performance. And that's a very different shift and a very different perspective in approaching
Yeah.
the work.
Yeah. I love that word that you just used there, which kind of almost sums up a lot of what you were talking about, your craft. You say that,
Yeah.
almost with a sense of passion in your voice, because it does become a craft, doesn't it? Because you are taking on certain clients, and you've got to find really a way for them to feel more at ease, more at peace with themselves. And it also brings up this kind of idea of cultural stuff, because I believe, from talking to many, many Americans, that it's more endemic within the American culture to have this desire to reach that pinnacle, to achieve those heights, to become wealthier and wealthier and more successful. And it happens in every culture, of course it does, but it just seems more prevalent in American culture than it does in the European culture, although it exists, of course. So, I mean, do you have any kind of ways that you would maybe generic ways, things that you would think would work particularly well with certain people who have that almost perfectionism about them because they're constantly driving to reach that summit? Is there anything in particular?
Yeah, I want to circle back to that question in a second, but I'm a student of philosophy and actually studied theology. And it's interesting to understand in some ways the way that the philosophy and the early theology of the United States was kind of based around this achieve for the sense of God's good grace and appreciation, and that those who worked hard were seen as being blessed. And so we have that very much baked into our history and our culture.
Right.
And so it is very much all around us. Can you repeat that question one more time? Because it was a good one, but I wanted
Yeah,
to make
no,
sure.
no. I mean, essentially, the last part I was saying is really: is there any kind of tactics or things that you would do in order to get the people into a state where they're feeling less likely to have that perfectionist streak about them? Any techniques that you might employ? I guess maybe generic ones that might be sort of things that you think, oh God, I'll draw on that because I've done that before. I'll draw on this. Is there anything
Mhm.
practical?
This is where I think a lot of this work is quite deep and and requires a radical sense of self-awareness that can be
Mm.
developed with another with community, through reflective practices on our own. But I don't know if any short tips or tricks or hacks really can help in the long run cope with that form of perfectionism
Mm.
or the exhaustion we were talking about earlier. And I think that's one of the traps that we get into is that we think, oh, if I just throw some breathing techniques at this, or if I just visualize success, if I just set the right goals or manage my time better, that I'll feel more accomplished in that sense of imposter syndrome or perfectionism will
Mm.
start to dissipate. And I think it really requires a sense of looking inwards and recognizing what are the patterns and the stories that I've inherited from the culture around me, from my early experiences that have led me to see myself in this way and to see these patterns of perfectionism or of imposter syndrome or whatever it might be as core to who I am. And then being able to shift into what are the things that really matter to me? What do I value? And who are the people that I'm most connected to?
Yeah.
And that type of reflective work opens up a whole new set of possibilities.
Wow.
And from there, I think there's a way in which we layer breathing tools for when we get overly stressed or
Yeah.
goal setting about where we might go next.
Yeah.
But really, it doesn't work. It's like building a house on a shaky foundation. If
Yeah. Okay.
we don't tend to the ground beneath us, um, then we're always building on unsolid ground.
Okay, that's a great analogy as well. I mean, I know where you're coming from on that, and after on many of my podcasts I've done, the solo episodes, etc., I've talked about these types of techniques, but they're quick fixes as such. They
Mhm.
break up. They're like, I don't want to say sticking plasters because that sounds a bit too disparaging, but they are ways of just having that momentary break and then using those breathing techniques or visualization or meditation, whatever the somatic exercises, I believe that they're called in the
Yeah.
in that world. But I love the idea that you're really approaching this in a more holistic way, and you're looking at the whole thing. And obviously, there's a lot of work that would need to be done with your clients in order for them to have that self-realization. And I think you mentioned earlier on about the idea that self-realization, self-awareness are absolutely fundamental in their progression in finding a way to feel that contentment within inside you. And obviously, having gone through your theological and your philosophical studies in the past, that's going to give you a much better
Mhm.
understanding of how you can bring that to the table. I get that. That's really, really interesting. So let's bring it back to a more practical sense for the moment,
Yeah.
because that's a lot of what I'm doing is very practically based. Let's imagine this scenario. Imagine tomorrow morning there's a senior executive and he's got or she's got 200 emails, 3 difficult meetings and a family pressures galore, and subsequently, uh, absolutely, really, well, hardly any time at all. So they've got this real pressure on them. What would someone with true inner confidence do differently during that day to
It's a
cope
good
with all that?
question. I think someone who has a deep sense of confidence and alignment with how they're approaching that day
Mm.
would really prioritize based on the things that matter most and their values. I also think that they would be able to, if they had 200 emails and a number of intense meetings and felt like they had no time, um, someone who really knows themselves would know what's a priority and what's not, and what can I delegate to my team,
Yeah.
where do I want to spend that time and effort? Um, but even somebody with quite a bit of confidence, I think that can come and go and wax and wane in many respects. Um, might might need to start the day just checking in and recognizing like what's happening within me right now, and um, why do I feel a lack of confidence or feel like ready to go? And if it's ready to
Mm.
go, then let's go attack the day and let's have a great,
Yeah.
fully alive, beautiful expression of ourself through our leadership, through our craft, through our relationships with our family.
Yeah.
If it's the other where it's like, wow, I'm just completely overwhelmed, that's a time to take a pause and turn to some of those reflective exercises. In our spiritual traditions and wisdom traditions, we call them contemplative practices. And my favorite definition of a contemplative practice comes from Walter Burghardt, who says it's a long, loving look at the real. So it might be as simple as starting the day and taking a breath and checking in with our body and with our thought
Yeah.
processes and noticing what's happening right now and how can I
Yeah.
approach that with a sense of compassion, that loving look, and recognize this is where I am and this is what's happening. And in many ways, the exhaustion, the stress, the anger, the anxiety, the worry, all of those things, we don't have full control over what emotions we experience. They come and they go. And so, can I actually just sit here and befriend it and recognize,
Yeah.
hey, anxiety's here with me today, or fatigue's here, and then recognize I have some choice in that. How do I want to work with it? And
Yeah.
we recognize it, we allow it, and then we choose in alignment with our values how to proceed and how to move
Yeah.
forward. But it's that long, loving look at the present reality, often which we want to push away or run away from. But that's what's here today. There's a whole lot of tasks ahead of me. I'm not feeling up for it, and that's okay. Now, how do I want to choose to proceed and move forward? And often that just subtle movement creates a sense of relief, a sense of breath, a sense of control and agency,
Mm.
that allows us all kinds of new possibilities. But when we're really stuck in it and just attached to the way life should be, and it's not, then we just find ourselves digging that hole deeper and deeper.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. And uh, I mean, this whole thing of obviously self-reflection, and you've already talked about something that I want to going into the practical side, so I don't really need to even go anywhere near that. But um, yeah, I mean, there is something on flow state that I'd like to look at. Really, it's because everybody wants that flow, don't they? Ideally, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's kind of, if you've got that flow, then you can just do everything with minimal with minimal distraction, with
Mhm.
real ease, etc. So, but what actually blocks flow before people even begin? Any ideas on that?
There's a whole bunch of factors, but some of them we've already talked about, like not
Yeah,
knowing my sense of purpose, which helps us
yeah,
set clear goals, which is a huge hallmark of flow state, as is intrinsic reward, and so doing something for its own sake. Both of those are part of the nine kind of factors that facilitate flow, and so knowing our purpose, knowing our direction is a huge part of that.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Another is just energy management and recognizing that flow comes in cycles. There's moments of kind of gritty uncomfortableness before we enter into that state.
Mm,
And it requires a good 20 to 30 minutes, especially in like cognitive work, to enter into flow. So creating blocks in our schedule that allow for an hour and a half to 3 hours or so of uninterrupted time, where
yeah,
we can, especially in this age of distractions,
yeah,
turn off our phone and really go into that deep work. And then it requires recovery on the other end of letting go and going for a walk, moving our bodies, refueling, um, it's tools that kind of help bring our nervous system back down. And then it's
mm,
in these cycles of intensity and recovery and intensity and recovery that it's easier to find flow. And then some of the things we already talked about, performance anxiety and imposter syndrome, the sense of I need to perform for my sense of self-worth. That's a huge blocker of flow because flow is one of these experiences where we lose a sense of self-consciousness. And all of those kind of ways of being are very self-focused and
yeah,
individual
yeah.
focused.
That's
So
great.
those
That's
are
really good.
some of the
Yeah.
ways that we can enter flow a little bit more easily.
I'm really glad you're talking about this, because even though, we both work in this sort of sector, this world, um, from different angles, different perspectives, but we do. And so it's great for me because we still need these constant reminders. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking
Mhm.
of something that's going to happen for me in a couple of days' time. It's something which I probably will. I'm kind of anxious about a particular performance as a musician,
Mhm.
even though it's very informal. I think it's a lack of organization that makes me more anxious, and so therefore that will block my flow. So
Mhm.
I'm glad we're talking about that now because I know that I'll go in with a
Yeah, yeah.
fresh perspective, and we do need those reminders. We really do, and even though we might live it, we might know it.
Mhm.
Whether we action it, which we probably do some of the time, and then other times you're thinking, yeah, I need to draw more on that. So I'm really glad you're talking about that because that's going to make
Mhm.
me sort of not be so anxious about something, and it's not even a proper gig. The proper gigs are fine. It's when it's unsure and it's somebody's birthday party and there's no sound system and no one knows what's
Absolutely.
going on. It's like
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's I think it touches on what we were covering earlier around well, one, uncertainty is a huge
yeah,
trigger of our fear response, right? And in this case, if I put myself in your shoes, I'd be feeling uncertain of like, am I going to have the materials that I need and the setup that I need
yeah,
to be able to perform and share my craft, my music as I would
yeah,
I would like, or is it going to be a space where I get thrown in there and I'm not sure what I'm doing, and then people are watching me and making assumptions or judgments of me, and that feels like uh,
yeah,
an existential threat, and really our nervous system treats it as an existential threat. So
wow,
even
yeah,
if it's as subtle as a music gig at a friend's birthday party, like we can are we're so perceptive to that kind of need for social
yeah,
belonging, and then all of a
yeah.
sudden it shapes how we're able to access our true gifts and our skills. And so
Exactly. I think the
so
key word
yeah.
there is uncertainty because I'm doing another concert which there's a trio and I know exactly what we're doing. We've got all the the,
Mhm.
the materials and we know we've played together before. But it's just like um, bring your musical instruments along. Let's. Wow, I don't know what was going on. There's no knowledge of anything. So yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
uncertainty is
Well,
really key.
well, let's stay with this for a second because I actually think our capacity to deal with uncertainty is one of the biggest factors between people who are high performers and great leaders and those who aren't. And so
Mm,
we're constantly facing uncertainty, whether it's in the world around us, whether it's in our
yeah,
personal lives. In many ways, we don't know what the next hour is going to hold, let alone the next day or couple of weeks.
mm,
And as the Buddhists have taught, right, everything's impermanent, and so uncertainty is all around us. But we really struggle with how to work with uncertainty, and it takes a deep self-trust to recognize I can be right here in the present moment, and I can trust that I'll be in the present moment and know what to do next in those
yeah,
moments that come as well. And that for me is the inner work, and it's a training process. It's a skill that we build just like lifting weights or going for runs, that
mm,
we put ourselves in increasingly more difficult, uncertain moments, and train our capacity to find that sense of calm, to find that inner stability, and to find that sense of confidence.
yeah. No, I
So
agree with you,
that,
and I know
yeah.
that when the day comes, I will be totally fine, and I will draw on those things. I suppose it's just an anticipation of something which is a little bit, it's a few days away, and it's just sort of niggling in the back of my mind.
Oh
But
yeah,
that's a
absolutely. And
subconscious.
and that happens to me all the time too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's a
So
it's
that's
a
it.
very human experience.
Yeah. There's something on mental toughness as well. Thanks for that. Is mental
Mhm.
toughness sometimes overrated?
I think it really depends on how we define mental toughness. If it's just
Okay.
grit hard, really kind of grit your teeth and bear down and work harder, I think for many people that is overrated, and many people are working extremely hard and still feeling like I'm lacking or it's not working out or something's not clicking. And so,
Yeah.
in that case, I do think sometimes it's actually a release and it's acceptance and it's letting go that allows us to be at our best.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, I would define that as mental toughness, the ability to, especially with athletes, when you make a mistake, to be able to just take that as data and information, recognize where we made a mistake but not become emotionally attached to it, and then to
Yeah.
release that experience and then turn to the next moment,
Yeah.
continually to be present to what's coming, and that ability to release and come back to the present, for me is what mental toughness looks like.
And it's funny as you're speaking, I'm thinking instantly, and I did an episode on which I drew the inspiration on Novak Djokovic, and he's a prime example.
Mhm.
Any tennis player that goes,
Oh yeah.
all tennis players at that professional level go through bad patches, and it's how they deal with that there and then. He's such an exemplary figure because he's able to go into that calm state and
Mhm.
just move on from that next point and put it behind him, or a section of points where he's playing badly, and they
Mhm.
come out on top. So he's a really good example of somebody that's able to deal with that as an
Absolutely.
athlete. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is another place where that long, loving look at the real comes in, right? If we attach judgment to a missed point and then start getting frustrated, our body tenses up, and then we miss the next point and then the
yeah,
next one, and then all of a sudden we dug ourselves in a big hole. And if we can just recognize, like, okay, that's out. I'm gonna accept and recognize the form that led to that, or the nice play by my opponent, and just rebound to the next moment and let go of that kind of judgmental attitude. All of a sudden, reality's a lot more clear, and we know how to respond. So, absolutely.
yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. And leadership. What's one question every leader should ask themselves every year?
Question I always come back to is, what do I want? What do I long for at the
Yeah.
deepest level? Not what do I want in terms of, a new house, a new car, the next promotion, but like, what do I deeply want? What do I want for the world? What do I want for my family? What do I want my days to look like? And to start to listen to that deeper longing from the heart space. And that can help us realign with the things that matter most to us.
Okay.
And that
Yeah.
that sense of reconnection really goes back to the beginning of our conversation, and the
Yeah.
exhaustion that can come when we're not aligned.
Yeah. That's great. That's really good. Thank you. And there's one burning question that I do have. It's kind of probably the most revealing question, or possibly the most useful question for many people out there,
Mhm.
even though a lot of things we've talked about have been really, really interesting. But
Yeah,
before you leave our listeners, uh, with one practice, can you think of one practice they can start tomorrow morning that would genuinely improve both their well-being and their performance?
sure. This is one of my favorite
Okay.
meditation practices. Sometimes it's called the guest house practice after a poem by Rumi. Sometimes it's called the welcome to the party meditation, because it has a little playful edge to it. But just to create a little bit of um, peaceful space, a calm setting, and sit down for 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Mm.
Um, Let your breathing slow down, and just start to notice what you're experiencing, and become really conscious of what's happening in your body, the moments and places of tension, where your mind starts to go. And each
Mm.
time you notice a new kind of experience, you just say, "Welcome to the party." And this is the party of being me in this moment. And that playfulness often helps us create a little bit of detachment, a little bit of
Yeah.
observer mentality of recognizing, oh, this is an experience that's coming and going, and you'll notice that these things come and go, and in that course of 15, 20 minutes, whatever, you'll have a whole bunch of experiences. And what we're doing is training our ability to be that detached observer that can
Yeah.
recognize and hold everything in that loving way. And
Fantastic.
then as you move through the day, it just creates a little bit more peace, a little bit more clarity. And you also start to learn, oh, all these experiences that I thought were bad, the anger, the tension, the stress that I don't like, they're all here for a reason, and they're here to tell me something. They're here as informative pieces of data, And then we notice, oh, in that meeting, I started to tense up, and now I can reflect on why did I, and why
Yeah.
might I be having those experiences. And so it's just an entrance into this self-reflective space that can create a little bit of immediate peace uh, and and confidence, but also in the long run, a whole bunch of wisdom as we begin to trust ourselves.
No, that's really fantastic. I love the idea. Obviously, I've talked to various people about the idea of just staying alone and being in a place, a space where you are not doing anything and you're just wondering what happens. But this idea of welcome to the party is an added
Yeah,
layer
yeah.
which I really do appreciate. So I shall be
Yeah, because
trying
we have
that
so much
myself.
resistance. We have so much resistance. So
Yeah.
to the things we don't want to feel or experience. And so that welcome is like, hey, you're here. Let's see what we can do with that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's very good. And I've got some rapid fire questions for you here, which is like a little bit of a gimmick on this
Shoot.
show.
Yeah.
And it's just a sort of like 90-second thing. So, one daily habit that gives you the biggest return.
For me, it's kind of the practice I just named, but also something I mentioned earlier, which is those rest and recovery and then stress intervals. So training my body and mind throughout the day, whether it's interval training and exercise, or it's blocking out spaces for deep work during my day, and then recovering with walk and food and water afterwards.
Yeah,
And kind of on the cyclical nature of push hard. So I'm in like a an eight or 10 kind of on a scale of intensity, and then back off down to a 2 or 3, and not just kind of sitting in this underlying um I've got to I gotta work, I gotta go, um middle kind of 5 or 6 all day.
yeah,
But this up and down rhythm. Yeah.
that's great. That's really good. Thank you. And can you complete the sentence? High performance is, I'll repeat that. High performance is,
High performance in its purest form is unobstructed self-expression of our deepest longings, desires, and values.
okay, great. Thank you. And what's one belief you've completely changed your mind about over the last 10 years?
I would say maybe not completely changed my mind about, but am continuing to learn, is that a lot of this inner work is not done in the head. It comes through the body, and it comes in relationship with other people. And so we
Right.
can't often think our way out of stressful patterns, or solve and fix all of our problems and sources of stress just through our cognitive capacities. It's one part of us, but the body, our connection with others, is another really important aspect of that work. And I'm learning that myself every day for sure.
Of course, of course. And we're always learning. I mean, that's it. We're students of life, and there's never any such thing as reaching the pinnacle. It's just a constant upwards things, but you're always getting better and better and improving. So that's the whole point. Growth. Yeah, good. Thank you. And fill in the blank in this sentence. Success without isn't success. Success without,
Success without connection to ourselves, connection to others, connection to a sacred reality that's bigger than ourselves. None of that is success.
okay. So success without that connection to
Yeah.
ourselves and to reality, and yeah, isn't success. That's great. Thank you. Now, Benjamin, for people who'd like to learn more about your work or perhaps take advantage of your complimentary 1 hour session, that's a long time. That's good. Where's the best place to send people, or where can they find you?
Yeah, people can find my work at innerlifeofsport.com. We talk about the inner life, the inner game that we discussed in this conversation.
Yeah.
And I have a weekly resource guide that I publish in my email list, which has tools from performance science, from sports psychology world, but also from contemplative practices. excerpts from poetry, from the wisdom traditions, all kind of woven together and showing the intersections between those things. So that's a great place to start. And then for folks who want to work with me, yeah, I offer for a 1 hour session where we can really get into it and go into a deep dive on some of the things that are blocking their performance and showing up on the surface, and start to reveal what are some of those unconscious patterns that
Yeah.
folks may not be aware of, that require a second person or a second set of eyes to really raise to the level of consciousness, so that they can have more agency, more choice in how they're navigating their work and their craft.
Brilliant. I'm going to be signing up for your email list because I think that sounds something that's right up my street. So thank you for
Perfect.
that. And
Thanks,
also,
Adam. Yeah.
the fact that you're offering an hour session, I mean, many people offer the complimentary sort of 15, 20 minutes, half an hour possibly. That's really good. So
Yeah, I want folks to really leave with a sense of you just in that first session, like we
yeah,
accomplished something. There's a new way of seeing myself and seeing the world that I'm leaving with. So that's a huge
yeah.
part of that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Benjamin. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show, and you've reminded me about many of the things that I need to go back into. So, the key to sort of sustainable high performance isn't really just about constantly trying to do more. It's about understanding ourselves better, and that's something that I'm going to take away. Like I
Absolutely.
always take away from my guests. I learn so much as well myself. It's really useful. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with the Busy Pro Fast Wellness community. I really appreciate that. And I think unless there's anything else you would like to add.
No, it's been a pleasure to be on the podcast and have this conversation with you, Al, and really
Yeah.
appreciate
All right.
the time and your thoughtful questions.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Without further ado, I bid you all farewell and goodbye from me and goodbye from Benjamin. Goodbye.